Hi everyone, my name is Kayla, and today we are going to be talking about a book that just absolutely crushed me, and it needs its own review video because of it. It's just an incredible tale, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was my first read of 2025 and the first book since the Sword of Kaigen that I can recall that has made me cry. Yeah, so it hurt. It's emotional. It's such an insightful look at how we view our lives and the companions and friends we make along the way. So, the book I am talking about is The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. And it's small. And when I say small, it's because I'm used to reading like 800-page chunky fantasy books, but it's around 300, just under 300 pages, 277 pages. Obviously, it's a smaller format of a book. As you can see, I've tabbed a lot, but essentially, this story follows Nana, the cat, and named so because of his crooked tail that looks like the number 7, and his owner, Satoru. And they're going on a trip across Japan to visit some of Satoru's old friends from childhood, from school, and just taking a trip. Two buddies taking a trip. Or so it would seem. Now, this book was actually very kindly gifted to me by my good friend Tori over at Tori Talks. And I think she sent it over for my birthday last year, and I got around to it at the start of the year thinking, you know what, it's small. I know it's supposed to be a little bit more of what I was in the mood for, which was something a little emotional, something, character driven, a little slower in pace, if you will, and something a bit more down to earth in terms of real life, as opposed to the fantasy wizards, dragons, and other things that I read. And it was exactly what I was looking for, a Studio Ghibli movie in written format. It just had the mood, the tone, the storytelling that resembled it so much, and I absolutely want more. And apparently, there is a follow up to this in form of a short story collection following 7 different stories within that, and that's a discussion for another day. But yes, I absolutely want more, and yet I was left feeling content, heartbroken, and uh, devastated and happy, all of it at once after finishing this book. Now, this starts off with Nana as a stray and Satoru taking him in. Their meeting, how it all occurs is just right off the bat gives you the exact tone and style of story that you're in for. It's a glimpse at Satoru's character through the eyes of outsiders. So we see this entire story about Satoru and his cat Nana from the eyes of his cat Nana and his friends as well. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But this story to me is about Nana and Satoru. The interesting choice of giving such an in-depth look at Satoru's character from an outside perspective was unique, but also extremely well done. Because we're not getting an inside look at Satoru's mind and the reasoning for their trips, there is a bit of mystery and unknown left with the story, and so you're left with Nana's perspective for a vast majority of the story itself. Now, that being said, Nana is a just probably one of the best cats I've read in written format in terms of being true to reality, or how I would imagine a cat's internal monologue sounding. Sarcastic, believing themselves to be far superior, and all of that attitude that goes with it, but also being extremely understanding, compassionate, and knowing when to be there for their owner. There was a couple lines that I ended up tagging in this because they were just, to me, hilarious in terms of Nana's internal dialogue. And here's one example. My level of cuteness when I was a kitten was such that passerby vied for the privilege of leaving me a little something to eat. That is Nana in a nutshell. Nana is sarcastic and a little bit full of himself, if you will. And yet Satoru is the complete opposite. Satoru is very giving and generous and doesn't really think a whole lot of himself or keep a whole lot for himself. A lot of what he has in terms of his personality is very kind, generous, and being there for other people. Now, we get Nana's perspective of Satoru in the present, but we also get flashbacks of Satoru when he meets up with his friends. And these flashbacks are how he met said friends. He's meeting up with 3 friends across his trip, and through these flashbacks, we see just how these friends met, but through the eyes of the friend and not Satoru. Again, this is an interesting perspective, an interesting choice, because your main character is Satoru. You meet these friends in each chapter, and each chapter you move on to the next one, and the story goes from there. But Satoru is always a staple of the story, along with Nana. And to never see his mindset, to never see inside his head to what's going on, and only seeing him through the eyes of others, it's just it's a risky choice in my perspective. It's a risky choice in terms of telling a story and getting a reader to be invested in said character, because you're getting outside judgments, influences, but you're never actually seeing the main character's viewpoint. For me, I loved it. The way it's told, how it all comes together, and the perspective that it does give you of Satoru and Nana as well makes it all the more impactful, in my opinion, but also gives you that added mystery and unknown, which makes it just that much more compelling. Now, obviously, I did tab quite a bit, and I'm so glad I did. I also did an immersion read with this, and the audiobook is just spectacular. Highly recommend it as well. And the reason I needed to tab this is because this story, at its core, is a look at friendship, a look at companionship, and the human experience when it comes to change and how to process the emotions that go along with that. And because of the nature of the story, the types of messages that it covers, but also it's just best to experience for yourself. I really can't recommend it enough. If you are looking for something that is a little bit reminiscent of Studio Ghibli in terms of its storytelling, you're looking for an emotional read, but something that would be grounding and insightful at the same time, I really do think this is the read for you, especially if you're looking at something a little bit more introspective in terms of processing anything in your own life in terms of change and the relationships in your life too. I can't forget that, because it also looks at how humans navigate relationships versus how an animal might, which is really a curious way of exploring that throughout this entire story. So I highly recommend this one if you are looking for something to pick up that fits all of that criteria, and just enjoy the ride is all I can say for that one. But yes, that was a phenomenal start to my reading in 2025. This is absolutely going to be a reread for me, a memorable read, if you will. And I am really looking forward to continuing with the next book by this author, because I think it was just stellar and I want to read more. I do want to put one quick note though, because I know I said that this is for fans of Studio Ghibli or that type of tone, but do keep in mind that this is translated from Japanese. It is set in Japanese culture in Japan. So if you are unfamiliar with that, or just not as familiar with that type of storytelling, just keep in mind that it is different than Western type of storytelling. So that is not a bad thing, not at all. I personally adore that. I just want to give people a heads up, because I had seen some reviews that said the storytelling style wasn't quite to their preference, and that's entirely valid. Everyone's preference is going to be different. So just keep in mind that this is originally Japanese, it's translated to English, and of course, it's going to have the settings and the culture that go along with Japan. So yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you give this book a try. If it's not for you, perfectly fine. Everyone's reading tastes are different, but I do hope you give it a try. I hope you enjoy it. That's the most important thing. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourselves.